Right, so apparently the most dangerous thing in Britain right now isn't an organised gang, a terror cell, or a climate protester gluing themselves to the M25. It's Birmingham Police deciding Israeli football fans might cause trouble at a Europa League match. A basic public safety call, one based on arrests and convictions and police intelligence, has turned into a Westminster morality play, complete with Keir Starmer declaring it the wrong decision. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood auditioning for the role of Israel's matchday liaison officer, and the press screaming antisemitism at a risk assessment because, let's face it, it's Israel we're talking about again, isn't it? If Maccabi Tel Aviv came from any other nation, this wouldn't even be an issue. But the chosen people have been slighted, even though their fans might consist of the worst, literally committing genocide in Gaza as part of the IDF, with a track record of rampant racism and criminal damage at other sporting venues, which is a matter of record. It's a story that tells you everything about who really calls the shots in this country now. The police act on evidence, the politicians act on behalf of another state. And the mainstream media act like Israel's unpaid PR department. So let's call these shysters out and hit them with a few home truths. Right, so Birmingham Safety Advisory Group, acting on advice from West Midlands Police, classified Aston Villa's upcoming Europa League fixture against Maccabi Tel Aviv as high risk. The decision barred away supporters from attending the 6th of November match as a result of that. Football club fans known for disruption get banned all the time, don't they? It should have been routine. Safety groups make such rulings whenever police intelligence indicates credible disorder risk. And that intelligence in this case is concrete. 62 arrests and multiple convictions have followed Maccabi Tel Aviv's previous European away fixture in Amsterdam at the end of last year, and further incidents were documented in Paris by Israeli fans later that same month. Under those circumstances, West Midlands Police advised that public safety could not be guaranteed if thousands of travelling fans arrived. During the Ajax Maccabi Tel Aviv fixture in November of last year, Dutch authorities recorded widespread disorder. Courts later convicted several visiting supporters of public violence, assault, and hate speech. Footage verified by police showed Israeli fans tearing down Palestinian flags, vandalising vehicles, and chanting offensive anti-Arab slogans, the likes of which I'm not going to repeat here. Then the 1-minute silence ahead of the match itself was disrupted. Amsterdam's annual Kristallnacht Memorial coincided with it, and this was cancelled for safety reasons. The chosen people of the self-proclaimed Jewish state, who hide behind the memory of the Holocaust to justify so many of their actions, who compare Palestinians directly to Nazis, showed scant regard for others acknowledging part of that same history themselves, did they? Similar behaviour followed that same month when Israel played France in Paris. Video evidence showed Israeli supporters attacking spectators and booing the French national anthem. It was a match that even French President Emmanuel Macron was in attendance at, and that didn't make a difference to Israeli fans either. Not that he did a lot about it either. But police contained the situation, yet confirmed altercations inside and outside the stadium at that event too. So for Birmingham's planners, those incidents matter. They were recent, they were documented, they're directly relevant to assessing risk, which always has to happen at such events. 2 days after the Birmingham announcement, though, Keir Starmer said publicly that the decision was wrong. Based on what then, Keith? He framed it as a matter of anti-Semitism, insisted the United Kingdom will not tolerate anti-Semitism on our streets. No authority had alleged anti-Semitic intent here at all. The ruling was purely operational, based on evidence. We're talking a football team with a track record for disorder, and our Prime Minister plays the anti-Semite card over it? What exactly does Israel have on you? What was your price for selling out? It's no wonder people ask these questions all the time of Starmer, is it? Because the decision is absolutely the right one in order to maintain order and public safety. Frankly, Israeli sporting teams should be boycotted the world over, as Indonesia have just done with Israel's gymnastics team, as a for instance. It's a choice. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood also made an announcement that she would review the ban and ensure that Israeli fans could attend safely. Well, how are you going to manage that one then without implementing a change in the law that would blatantly be seen to be serving Israeli interests and not our national interests at all? Laws that we'd have to abide by. Mahmood is a Birmingham MP, a Muslim from a large Muslim population, and you want to put Israeli fans with a track record of racist attacks into that demographic, given their conduct towards Muslim-majority Palestine? There's just no conceivable way of saying this in any way a safe decision to overturn, a decision that even warrants it because the safety concerns are absolutely justified here. Such a review, as Mahmood has suggested, would be unprecedented. Ministers normally have no role in local match classifications. They generally have better things to do, funnily enough, like running the entire country. Why such an interest in one football match by our national government? The Safety Advisory Group refused to reverse the decision, though, and kudos to them for that. Its members reiterated that evidence and not politics determine their conclusion. By then, however, the issue had shifted from the policing aspect to, well, ideology, because it always descends to that in the end when it comes to Zionism. Independent Birmingham MP Ayub Khan supported the decision that they had made publicly, and he thanked the residents who had petitioned for the ban, who were aware of Maccabi's reputation and their fans' conduct. Within hours, senior figures from all four major establishment parties were either denouncing him directly or other media tweets relating to this decision. You can look the tweets up for yourself. Figures from Richard Tice to Chris Philp to Tim Farron, Ed Davey, Laura Trott, Paul Kohler, Mike Katz and more, prostrating themselves over a non-issue, over a safety issue domestically, because it impacts Israel. When Khan defended the police against unfounded accusations of anti-Semitism, headlines, for example, from The Telegraph today have labelled him a pro-Gaza MP who had cast doubt on October 7th. Well, that context matters. Israeli military officials have since acknowledged activating the Hannibal Directive on that date, meaning that some Israeli civilians were killed by Israeli fire during the Hamas attack. That admission is documented in Israeli media. It's not conjecture. Khan's social media repost had referred to those reports. None of that featured in the coverage here. None of that context was provided here. The mainstream media simply circling the wagons for Israel, just like establishment politicians were. His support for the Birmingham Police was portrayed as extremism. Supporting the police, now extremism. Reinforcing the pattern that any stance inconvenient to Israel's narrative invites political isolation. And of course we've seen the reverse where the police are concerned with the Palestine Action protests. It all comes about from any stance that is inconvenient to Israel. If media and political narratives weren't wrong-headed enough already, though, they've all placed themselves on the same side as Tommy Ten Names here on this issue, as the far-right racist was invited to Israel. And he quote-tweeted Khan with photos of himself wearing Maccabi Tel Aviv strip. I cannot imagine why Israel is so fond of Robinson, but there's never been a grift he didn't jump on the bandwagon of, has there? Yet mainstream media and mainstream politicians are on the same side as him on this issue. The Telegraph's not alone, though. Other national newspapers adopted identical framing. Birmingham was described as a hotbed of sectarianism, and commentary from the comic that masquerades as a newspaper, the Daily Express, claimed that anti-Zionism is driving a racist horror show in modern Britain, directly conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, something many people would these days consider to be rather anti-Semitic in and of itself. These claims are utterly baseless and disgusting. West Midlands Police confirmed no anti-Semitic incidents linked to this ban. Independent and international outlets reported the facts quite plainly. A high-risk match, recent convictions abroad, and a local authority following precedent. But broadcast networks echoed Westminster, repeating the charge of discrimination while downplaying the documented record of violence by Maccabi supporters. The effect was narrative synchronisation. Public safety turned into moral panic. Labour, Conservative, Liberal Democrat and Reform UK spokespeople each condemning the ban in near identical terms. None referred to the Amsterdam convictions or the police intelligence. All spoke of ensuring Jewish supporters can attend safely, a phrase implying that the ban itself endangered Jewish safety rather than protecting the general public. And to that I thought to myself, well, I rather hope any Jewish Aston Villa fans will enjoy the match in peace. But for some reason, none of these politicians seem to have thought about them. It's not really about Judaism, therefore, is it? It's all about Israel. This unanimity illustrated what has become a standing rule in Westminster, though. Criticism or constraint directed at an Israeli institution must be countered immediately to avoid accusation of prejudice. The Aston Villa case showed that reflex in its purest form. Under the Safety of Sports Grounds Act 1975, the power to impose crowd restrictions lies with local authorities and the police, not with ministers. Those decisions are insulated from political pressure precisely to maintain public confidence. This is why I said, Mahmood, we'd literally have to change the law to force this point. When central government seeks to alter a classification after it has been set, it undermines that independence. Starmer's authoritarianism being weaponised for Israel. Such interference could and should be challenged in court as irrational and contrary to statute. If precedent allows ministers to overrule a police risk assessment for political optics, then policing without fear or favour becomes a slogan and no longer a principle, though I appreciate, again I'll reiterate, some police forces themselves have brought that into disrepute, especially in recent weeks concerning Palestine action. Claims that Birmingham's Jewish residents feared to be seen were repeated across broadcast and print media, though, but no corroborating evidence ever emerged. The police cited 0 related hate crime reports. Meanwhile, the original risk assessment based on arrests, convictions and racist chanting abroad remained unchallenged by any factual counter-evidence, and so it remains. Yet the narrative is completely inverted counter to reality. A decision grounded in documented violence was reframed as an act of discrimination. The move was rhetorical, not evidential. By converting safety data into a moral dispute, national leaders replaced recorded risk with imagined grievance. European football routinely imposes travel bans after violence. Russian clubs were excluded entirely after 2022. Israel should be treated the same way, but hypocrisy where they are concerned has now become a standing order, frankly, hasn't it? No comparable sanction has ever been applied to Israeli clubs, even amid documented disorder. UEFA urged Birmingham to accommodate Israeli fans if possible, whilst ignoring the specific police intelligence that made it impossible. A YouGov survey conducted this week showed that 42% of respondents supported the ban given Maccabi Tel Aviv's record. Only 28% opposed it. The public sided with the police. The political and media establishment sided with Israel. And that divergence illustrates how detached elite consensus has become from public sentiment. Ordinary voters recognise double standards even when institutions pretend they do not exist. Shabana Mahmood's decision to challenge her own city's safety authority puts her at odds with a constituency that has repeatedly marched for Gaza and supported the petition for the ban. Her intervention signalled that party loyalty on Israel now supersedes local accountability, even for ministers representing the very communities that could be directly affected. The word antisemitism was not in the Birmingham ruling, yet it dominated the national debate around this story. Its deployment turned a procedural measure into a test of virtue. And that expansion of definition drains meaning from the term and weaponizes it against factual scrutiny. Equating criticism of Israel with hatred of Jews is logically and morally wrong, and yet again and again and again we see it being done. Many Jewish groups, including Namod and Judas, have stated as much repeatedly, yet their voices are of course absent from mainstream coverage because they're inconvenient. The result is a discourse where the state of Israel becomes synonymous with Jewish identity, erasing diversity within Jewish opinion and turning a state's behaviour into a sacred category. In Amsterdam and Paris, both Jewish and non-Jewish residents suffered intimidation and property damage from Israeli hooligans. Their experiences underpin Birmingham's risk assessment, yet they're erased from British reporting too. By ignoring those victims, by ignoring the facts, by ignoring the evidence, commentators preserved the fiction that banning violent fans punishes innocents rather than protects the public. The Aston Villa case revealed an unwritten rule. When Israel is involved, normal procedure no longer applies. And this is basically fact now, isn't it? That is the Maccabi exception. Every other club with a similar record faces restrictions. Israel's representatives receive political intervention and media sympathy. It's not conjecture anymore to say this. It's visible in the statements and the coverage and the timing. A local authority applied standard policy. National leaders then called it bigotry. That inversion is the essence of exceptionalism. Operational independence in policing depends on the absence of political veto. If Downing Street can rewrite a high-risk classification after it is issued, every single future decision becomes contingent on political optics and not safety. The Birmingham dispute therefore concerns more than just one football match here. It tests whether factual evidence can withstand ideological pressure when a foreign ally is involved, the same one every time it seems. This incident fits a longer record of institutional indulgence towards Israel. Arms exports continue, despite the evidence of use in Gaza. Regulators document imbalance in media coverage, but impose no penalties. Politicians treat calls for ceasefire as disloyalty while repeating the phrase Israel's right to defend itself. The same pattern, facts downplayed, optics prioritised, now governs domestic decisions, even on stadium safety, when it comes to Israel. Every description in mainstream coverage reverses the meaning. Israeli hooliganism became clashes. A police restriction became discrimination. A supporting MP became sectarian. This language trains audiences to distrust evidence whenever Israel's reputation is at stake. It also warns officials that neutrality carries professional risk. That is how exceptionalism reproduces itself, through the deterrence of honesty. If ministers succeed in forcing reversal and violence occurs at Villa Park, accountability will be traceable. It's got to come straight back to their doorsteps. Westminster Police issued the warning. A safety advisory group applied the law. A government is trying to intervene in that now. And no official can claim ignorance. The chain of decision-making is already documented. Each suppression of fact to protect narratives erodes public confidence. When citizens read court verdicts confirming racist violence and then hear their leaders call a safety measure anti-Semitic, they learn that some truths are just politically forbidden. And that perception corrodes both journalism and governance. Once trust is lost, it's not easy to get back. The true danger lies not in one night of potential disorder, but in the precedent this would set. If people conclude that some groups are above regulation, then the whole legitimacy of enforcement collapses completely. Israel thinks it belongs on a pedestal, and this government seems determined to place it exactly where it wants to be. When law is applied selectively to serve diplomatic convenience, the distinction between democracy and patronage ends up being erased. That is the deeper security risk Britain now faces. The Villa Park case is small in scale, but large in implication. It asks whether local evidence can outweigh international politics, and whether policing can remain independent when Israel is the subject. So far, the answer has been no, and for reasons far beyond just this football match, of course. The Birmingham Authority acted by the book. The government then called it prejudice. That is the Maccabi exception in full view, or the Israel exception might perhaps be better. Let's give this a name. A local safety ruling has exposed the alignment of Britain's political and media establishment with Israel's sensitivities. The police followed evidence, politicians followed narrative, journalists followed the politicians. Public opinion backed the police, but power is still backing Israel. If this ban gets overturned and disorder follows, the responsibility will be clear and the precedent permanent, and that will all be on Starmer and Mahmood. Evidence cannot survive ideology when the ideology just serves Israel. Whatever happened to having a government that actually served us in this country? Israel isn't getting its own way all the time, however, as Indonesia have proven. That story I alluded to earlier that exposes what Starmer is talking about here in the UK as very much his political choice to make. So find out how Indonesia has put Israel in its place with a hefty dose of BDS in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.